Hey guys, Sam from Manfa's Makes. Happy Sunday! I hope you have had a lovely weekend. Mine has been super busy. On Friday, I went out to see a work colleague in a play. On Saturday, we went Christmas shopping and it was exhausting, but we're a bit closer to getting Christmas sorted, which is great. And Sunday, I have work, so mixed bag, but pretty okay. Although, no crochet time. Zero crochet time. Oh well, I'm sure I'll find time soon. I hope so. So, welcome back to all my returners and hi to any newbies. It is so great to see you here. If you are new, on a Saturday and a Sunday, it's a bit more of a chilled vibe here at Manfa's Makes, where I read you stories from Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. Little disclaimer, this book was written hundreds of years ago. I am literally just reading the words of the author. I am not endorsing or condoning any of the themes or the opinions or anything like that. I'm literally just reading you the stories. Things have changed a lot since this was written. There is a complete playlist on my channel, and there is also another playlist for The Wizard of Oz that I have also read to you. But primarily, I am a crochet and yarny channel with a few extra little bonuses chucked in along the way. And I hope you stick around. So, I am going to put the book on the table and I'm going to be looking down at the table while I read. So, you really don't have to pay attention to the screen. You can just listen. A lot of you like audiobooks while you craft, and that is why I do this on a weekend. And it is a bit more of a chill vibe for everyone, because there's plenty of mayhem and madness during the week at Manfa's Makes. So, sit back, relax, grab your project. Hope you have a lovely drink to hand. And let's get started. So today we are on story 127 and it is called The Iron Stove. In the days when wishing was still of some use, a king's son was bewitched by an old witch and shut up in an iron stove in a forest. There he passed many years and no one could deliver him. Then a king's daughter came into the forest who had lost herself and could not find her father's kingdom again. After she had wandered about for 9 days, she at length came to the iron stove. Then a voice came forth from it and asked her, "From where do you come, and where are you going?" She answered, "I have lost my father's kingdom and cannot get home again." Then a voice inside the iron stove said, "I will help you to get home again, and that indeed most swiftly, if you will promise to do what I desire of you. I am the son of a far greater king than your father, and I will marry you." Then she was afraid and thought, "Good heavens, what can I do with an iron stove?" But as she much wished to get home to her father, she promised to do as he desired. But he said, "You shall return here and bring a knife with you and scrape a hole in the iron." Then he gave her a companion who walked near her but did not speak, but in 2 hours he took her home. There was great joy in the castle when the king's daughter came home, and the old king fell on her neck and kissed her. She, however, was sorely troubled, and said, "Dear father, what have I suffered? I should never have got home again from the great wild forest if I had not come to an iron stove. But I have been forced to give my word that I will go back to it, set it free, and marry it." Then the old king was so terrified that he all but fainted, for he had but this one daughter. They therefore resolved they would send in her place the miller's daughter, who was very beautiful. They took her there, gave her a knife, and said she was to scrape at the iron stove. So she scraped at it for 24 hours, but could not bring off the least morsel of it. When day dawned, a voice in the stove said, "It seems to me it is day outside." Then she answered, "It seems so to me too. I fancy I hear the noise of my father's mill." "So you are a miller's daughter? Then go your way at once, and let the king's daughter come here." Then she went away at once and told the old king that the man outside there would have none of her. He wanted the king's daughter. They, however, still had a swineherd's daughter who was even prettier than the miller's daughter, and they determined to give her a piece of gold to go to the iron stove instead of the king's daughter. So she was taken there, and she also had to scrape for 24 hours. She, however, made nothing of it. When day broke, a voice inside the stove cried, "It seems to me it is day outside." Then answered she, "So it seems to me also. I fancy I hear my father's horn blowing." "Then you are a swineherd's daughter. Go away at once and tell the king's daughter to come, and tell her all must be done as promised, and if she does not come, everything in the kingdom shall be ruined and destroyed, and not one stone be left standing on another." When the king's daughter heard that, she began to weep, but now there was nothing for it but to keep her promise. So she took leave of her father, put a knife in her pocket, and went forth to the iron stove in the forest. When she got there, she began to scrape, and the iron gave way, and when 2 hours were over, she had already scraped a small hole. Then she peeped in and saw a youth so handsome and so brilliant with gold and with precious jewels that her very soul was delighted. Now, therefore, she went on scraping and made the hole so large that he was able to get out. Then said he, "You are mine and I am yours. You are my bride and have released me." He wanted to take her away with him to his kingdom, but she entreated him to let her go once again to her father, and the king's son allowed her to do so. But she was not to say more to her father than 3 words, and then she was to come back again. So she went home, but she spoke more than 3 words, and instantly the iron stove disappeared, and was taken far away over glass mountains and piercing swords, but the king's son was set free, and no longer shut up in it. After this she bade goodbye to her father, took some money with her, but not much, and went back to the great forest and looked for the iron stove, but it was nowhere to be found. For 9 days she sought it, and then her hunger grew so great that she did not know what to do, for she could no longer live. When it was evening, she seated herself in a small tree and made up her mind to spend the night there, as she was afraid of wild beasts. When midnight drew near, she saw in the distance a small light, and thought, there I should be saved. She got down from the tree and went towards the light, but on the way she prayed. Then she came to a little old house, and much grass had grown all about it, and a small heap of wood lay in front of it. She thought, where have I come? And peeped in, and peeped in through the window, but she saw nothing inside but toads, big and little, except a table well covered with wine and roast meat, and the plates and glasses were of silver. Then she took courage and knocked at the door. The fat toad cried, "Little green waiting maid with the limping leg, little dog of the limping leg, hop here and over there, and quickly see who is outside." And a small toad came walking by and opened the door to her. When she entered, they all bade her welcome, and she was forced to sit down. They asked, "Where have you come from, and where are you going?" Then she related all that had befallen her, and how because she had transgressed the order which had been given her not to say more than 3 words, the stove and the king's son also had disappeared, and now she was about to seek him over hill and dale until she found him. Then the old fat one said, "Little green waiting maid with the limping leg, little dog of the limping leg, hop here and over there, and bring me the great box." Then the little one went and brought the box. After this they gave her meat and drink, and took her to a well-made bed, which felt like silk and velvet, and she laid herself in it in God's name and slept. When morning came, she arose, and the old toad gave her 3 needles out of the great box, which she was to take with her. They would be needed by her, for she had to cross a high glass mountain, and go over 3 piercing swords and a great lake. If she did all this, she would get her lover back again. Then she gave her 3 things, which she was to take the greatest care of, namely 3 large needles, a plough wheel, and 3 nuts. With these she travelled onwards, and when she came to the glass mountain, which was so slippery, she stuck the 3 needles first behind her feet and then before them, and so got over it. And when she was over it, she hid them in a place which she marked carefully. After this she came to the 3 piercing swords, and then she seated herself on her plough wheel and rolled over them. At last she arrived in front of a great lake, and when she had crossed it, she came to a large and beautiful castle. She went and asked for a place. She was a poor girl, she said, and would like to be hired. She knew, however, that the king's son, whom she had released from the iron stove in the great forest, was in the castle. Then she was taken as a kitchen maid at low wages. But already the king's son had another maiden by his side whom he wanted to marry, for he thought that she had long been dead. In the evening, when she had washed up and was done, she felt in her pocket and found the 3 nuts which the old toad had given her. She cracked one with her teeth and was going to eat the kernel, when lo and behold, there was a stately royal garment in it. But when the bride heard of this, she came and asked for the dress and wanted to buy it, and said, "It is not a dress for a servant girl." But she said no, she would not sell it, but if the bride would grant her one thing, she should have it, and that was let her sleep one night in her bridegroom's chamber. The bride gave her permission because the dress was so pretty, and she had never had one like it. When it was evening, she said to her bridegroom, "That silly girl will sleep in your room." "If you are willing, so am I," said he. She, however, gave him a glass of wine in which she had poured a sleeping potion. So the bridegroom and the kitchen maid went to sleep in the room, and he slept so soundly that she could not wake him. She wept the whole night and cried, "I set you free when you were in an iron stove in the wild forest. I sought you and walked over a glass mountain and 3 sharp swords and a great lake before I found you, and yet you will not hear me." The servants sat by the chamber door and heard how thus wept the whole night through, and in the morning they told it to their lord. And the next evening, when she had washed up, she opened the second nut, and a far more beautiful dress was within it. And when the bride beheld it, she wished to buy that also. But the girl would not take money, and begged that she might once again sleep in the bridegroom's chamber. The bride, however, gave him a sleeping potion, and he slept so soundly that he could hear nothing. But the kitchen maid wept the whole night long and cried, "I set you free when you were in an iron stove in the wild forest. I sought you and walked over a glass mountain and over 3 sharp swords and a great lake before I found you, and yet you will not hear me." The servants sat by the chamber door and heard her weeping the whole night through, and in the morning informed their lord of it. And on the third evening, when she had washed up, she opened the third nut, and within it was a still more beautiful dress, which was stiff with pure gold. When the bride saw that, she wanted to have it, but the maiden only gave it up on condition that she might for the third time sleep in the bridegroom's apartment. The king's son was, however, on his guard and threw the sleeping potion away. Now, therefore, when she began to weep and to cry, "Dearest love, I set you free when you were in the iron stove in the terrible wild forest," the king's son leapt up and said, "You are the true one, you are mine, and I am yours." Thereupon, while it was still night, he got into a carriage with her, and they took away the false bride's clothes so that she could not get up. When they came to the great lake, they sailed across it, and when they reached the 3 sharp cutting swords, they seated themselves on the plough wheel. And when they got to the glass mountain, they thrust 3 needles in it, and so at length they got to the little old house. But when they went inside that, it was a great castle, and the toads were all disenchanted and were king's children and full of happiness. Then the wedding was celebrated, and the king's son and the princess remained in the castle, which was much larger than the castles of their fathers. As, however, the old king grieved at being left alone, they fetched him away and brought him to live with them, and they had 2 kingdoms and lived in happy wedlock. A mouse did run. This story is done. So that was our first story, guys. Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of tea and we will continue. Okay. So, story 128, The Lazy Spinner. In a certain village there once lived a man and his wife, and the wife was so idle that she would never work at anything. Whatever her husband gave her to spin, she did not get done, and what she did spin she did not wind, but let it all remain entangled in a heap. If the man scolded her, she was always ready with her tongue and said, "Well, how should I wind it when I have no reel? Just you go into the forest and get me one." "If that is all," said the man, "then I will go into the forest and get some wood for making reels." Then the woman was afraid that if he had the wood he would make her a reel of it, and she would have to wind her yarn off and then begin to spin again. She thought a little, and then a lucky idea occurred to her, and she secretly followed the man into the forest, and when he had climbed into a tree to choose and cut the wood, she crept into the thicket below, where he could not see her, and cried, "He who cuts wood for reels shall die, and he who winds shall perish." The man listened, laid down his axe for a moment, and began to consider what that could mean. "Hullo," he said at last, "what can that have been? My ears must have been singing. I won't alarm myself for nothing." So he again seized the axe and began to hew. Then again there came a cry from below, "He who cuts wood for reels shall die, and he who winds shall perish." He stopped and felt afraid and alarmed, and pondered over the circumstance. But when a few moments had passed, he took heart again, and a third time he stretched out his hand for the axe and began to cut. But someone called out a third time and said loudly, He who cuts wood for reels shall die, and he who winds shall perish. That was enough for him, and all inclination had departed from him, so he hastily descended the tree and set out on his way home. The woman ran as fast as she could by byways, so as to get home first. So when he entered the parlour, she put on an innocent look as if nothing had happened, and said, "Well, have you brought a nice piece of wood for reels?" "No," said he, "I see very well that winding won't do," and told her what had happened to him in the forest, and from that time forth left her in peace about it. Nevertheless, after some time, the man again began to complain of the disorder in the house. "Wife," said he, "it is really a shame that the spun yarn should lie there all entangled." "I'll tell you what," said she, "as we still don't come by any reel, go up into the loft and I will stand down below, and will throw the yarn up to you, and you will throw it down to me, and so we shall get a skein after all." "Yes, that will do," said the man. So they did that, and when it was done, he said, "The yarn is in skeins, now it must be boiled." The woman was again distressed. She certainly said, "Yes, we will boil it next morning early," but she was secretly contriving another trick. Early in the morning she got up, lighted a fire, and put the kettle on, only instead of the yarn she put in a lump of tow and let it boil. After that she went to the man who was still lying in bed and said to him, "I must just go out, you must get up and look after the yarn which is in the kettle on the fire, but you must be at hand at once, mind that, for if the cock should happen to crow and you are not attending to the yarn, it will become tow." The man was willing, and took good care not to loiter. He got up as quickly as he could and went into the kitchen, but when he reached the kettle and peeped in, he saw to his horror nothing but a lump of tow. Then the poor man was as still as a mouse, thinking he had neglected it, and was to blame, and in future said no more about yarn and spinning, but you yourself must own she was an odious woman. A little bizarre, that one. Okay, so the next story is story 129, and it is called The Four Skillful Brothers. There was once a poor man who had 4 sons, and when they were grown up, he said to them, "My dear children, you must now go out into the world, for I have nothing to give you. So set out and go to some distance and learn a trade, and see how you can make your way." So the 4 brothers took their sticks, bade their father farewell, and went through the town gate together. When they had travelled about for some time, they came to a crossroad which branched off in 4 different directions. Then said the eldest, "Here we must separate, but on this day in 4 years we will meet each other again at this spot, and in the meantime we will seek our fortunes." Then each of them went his way, and the eldest met a man who asked him where he was going and what he was intending to do. "I want to learn a trade," he replied. Then the other said, "Come with me and be a thief." "No," he answered, "that is no longer regarded as a reputable trade, and the end of it is that one has to swing on the gallows." "Oh," said the man, "you need not be afraid of the gallows. I will only teach you to get such things as no other man could ever lay hold of, and no one will ever detect you." So he allowed himself to be talked into it, and while with the man became an accomplished thief, and so dexterous that nothing was safe from him if he once desired to have it. The second brother met a man who put the same question to him what he wanted to learn in the world. "I don't know yet," he replied. "Then come with me and be an astronomer. There is nothing better than that, for nothing is hid from you." He liked the idea and became such a skillful astronomer that when he had learned everything and was about to travel onwards, his master gave him a telescope and said to him, with that you can you see." I think there's a typo, guys. "With that, I'll just read it and make it sense. With that you can see whatever takes place either on earth or in heaven, and nothing can remain concealed from you." A hunter took the third brother into training, and gave him such excellent instruction in everything which related to huntership that he became an experienced hunter. When he went away, his master gave him a gun and said, "It will never fail you. Whatever you aim at, you are certain to hit." The youngest brother also met a man who spoke to him and inquired what his intentions were. "Would you not like to be a tailor?" said he. "Not that I know of," said the youth. Sitting doubled up from morning till night, driving the needle and the goose backwards and forwards, is not to my taste." "Oh, but you are speaking in ignorance," answered the man. "With me you would learn a very different kind of tailoring, which is respectable and proper, and for the most part very honourable." So he let himself be persuaded, and went with the man, and learned his art from the very beginning. When they parted, the man gave the youth a needle, and said, "With this you can sew together whatever is given you, whether it is as soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and it will all become one piece of stuff, so that no seam will be visible." When the appointed 4 years were over, the four brothers arrived at the same time at the crossroads, embraced and kissed each other, and returned home to their father. "So now," said he, quite delighted, "the wind has blown you back again to me." They told him of all that had happened to them, and that each had learned his own trade. Now they were sitting just in front of the house under a large tree, and the father said, "I will put you all to the test and see what you can do." Then he looked up and said to his second son, "Between two branches up at the top of this tree there is a chaffinch's nest. Tell me how many eggs there are in it." The astronomer took his glass, looked up, and said, "There are 5." When the father said to the eldest, "Fetch the eggs down without disturbing the bird which is sitting hatching them," the skilful thief climbed up and took the 5 eggs from beneath the bird, which never observed what he was doing, and remained quietly sitting where she was, and brought them down to his father. The father took them and put one of them on each corner of the table, and the 5th in the middle, and said to the hunter, "With one shot you shall shoot me the 5 eggs in two through the middle." The hunter aimed and shot the eggs, all 5 as the father had desired, and that at one shot. He certainly must have had some of the powder for shooting round corners. "Now it's your turn," said the father to the 4th son. "You shall sew the eggs together, and the young birds that are inside them as well, and you must do it so that they are not hurt by the shot." The tailor brought his needle and sewed them as his father wished. When he had done this, the thief had to climb up the tree again and carry them to the nest, and put them back again under the bird without her being aware of it. The bird sat her full time, and after a few days the young ones crept out, and they had a red line round their necks where they had been sewn together by the tailor. "Well," said the old man to his sons, "I begin to think you are worth more than green clover. You have used your time well and learned something good. I can't say which of you deserves the most praise. That will be proved if you have but an early opportunity of using your talents." Not long after this there was a great uproar in the country, for the king's daughter was carried off by a dragon. The king was full of trouble about it, both by day and night, and caused it to be proclaimed that whoever brought her back should have her to wed. The 4 brothers said to each other, "This would be a fine opportunity for us to show what we can do," and resolved to go forth together and liberate the king's daughter. "I will soon know where she is," said the astronomer, and looked through his telescope and said, "I see her already. She is far away from here on a rock in the sea, and the dragon is beside her, watching her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers, and sailed with them over the sea until they came to the rock. There the king's daughter was sitting, and the dragon was lying asleep on her lap. The hunter said, "I dare not fire. I should kill the beautiful maiden at the same time." "Then I will try my art," said the thief, and he crept over and stole her away from under the dragon, so quietly and dexterously that the monster never noticed it, but went on snoring. Full of joy, they hurried off with her on board, and steered out into the open sea. But the dragon, who when he awoke had found no princess there, followed them, and came snorting angrily through the air. Just as he was circling above the ship, and about to descend on it, the hunter shouldered his gun and shot him to the heart. The monster fell down dead, but was so large and powerful that his fall shattered the whole ship. Fortunately, however, they laid hold of a couple of planks and swam about the wide sea. Then again they were in great peril, but the tailor, who was not idle, took his wondrous needle, and with a few stitches sewed the planks together, and they seated themselves upon them, and collected together all the fragments of the vessel. Then he sewed these so skilfully together that in a very short time the ship was once more seaworthy, and they could go home again in safety. When the king once more saw his daughter, there were great rejoicings. He said to the 4 brothers, "One of you shall have her as wife, but which of you is it to be? You must settle among yourselves." Then a warm contest arose among them, for each of them preferred his own claim. The astronomer said, "If I had not seen the princess, all your arts would have been useless, so she is mine." The thief said, "What would have been the use of your seeing if I had not got her away from the dragon, so she is mine." The hunter said, "You and the princess and all of you would have been torn to pieces by the dragon if my ball had not hit him, so she is mine." The tailor said, "And if I, by my art, had not sewn the ship together again, you would all of you have been miserably drowned, so she is mine." Then the king uttered this saying, "Each of you has an equal right, and as all of you cannot have the maiden, none of you shall have her, but I will give to each of you as a reward half a kingdom." The brothers were pleased with this decision, and said, "It is better thus that we should be at variance with each other." Then each of them received half a kingdom, and they lived with their father in the greatest happiness as long as it pleased God. So guys, I am actually going to leave it there for today. I hope you enjoyed your stories. I hope you have managed to get plenty of crafting time in today and that your projects are coming along nicely. There is another busy week coming up on Manfa's Makes. We have Magazine Monday, we have Monetization Winnings on Tuesday, we have Happy Mail on Wednesday, Tile of the Week Thursday on Thursday, and Crochet Catch Up on Friday, and then we are back to our weekend stories again. So when you have time and when you are able, it will be great to see you pop back again in the week to see what we are getting up to. But until then, stay safe, be kind, look after one another, get some good quality time in with your loved ones, and get some good quality crafting time in. I will see you in the next one or around the YouTube streets. Love you guys. See you soon. Bye.